And
Okay,
we got
welcome.
it.
Yeah, we got it, I think. Perfect.
Yeah. So hello everyone. Hi.
Welcome, welcome. So today
Oh,
is April 5th, 2023. I'm Dr. Kristie Soares in Boulder, Colorado. Today I have the pleasure of talking to DJ ViViANO Almonte. DJ ViViANO, residing in the Fort Lauderdale, Miami area. Famous pioneer DJ, among other places, Studio 54, Club A Street. So I'm looking forward to talking to you. Thanks for being here today, Viviano.
oh, you're very welcome. And hello to everyone out there. Hi. Hope you're doing well. Having a great day or evening or night. uh,
So let's start. I want to hear the story of how you very first got into DJing.
wow, that's going back a long, long, long time. Well, I was visiting, I went to a friend's wedding. And for the first time there, I saw the DJ. I didn't even know what a DJ was actually, and and it's funny because well, I shouldn't say I didn't know what a DJ was because yeah, we used to go to like this underground club in Brooklyn called the Red Light, and we used to kind of sneak in with false ID and everything because we looked, my friends and I, we looked a little older, and so you know Friday nights I used to kind of like we were supposed to go to a church meeting on Fridays, you know, the youth kind of things, and we used to either lie to our parents and tell them you know we had to stay late for whatever reason, or there was some kind of a function going on, and then from there we would go and sneak into the club. And it was this club called the Red Light, and they had a DJ, and it was amazing because the music was non-stop. It was like listening to one full record for the whole night, and I was really amazed by it, and that's what got me started. And I would run into the record store, and I would try to sing the song, and the guy would play the 45s, because at that time what we had was 45s. That's all we had. And I think they were like 49 cents for a 45 back then. They started like, and then whenever they were getting a little older, they would sell them for 29 cents. So I'm taking you back a long, long time. And my first experience with DJing was I went to a friend's wedding, and the DJ was there, and his partner who was supposed to be there, I guess he was setting up, and his partner was late, got caught in traffic, and he was late, and he was there and undressed, and I was kind of just being friendly to him, and he said, look, can you do me a favor? Is there any way that you can, you know, play some records? He was teaching me what to do, and I started playing, you know, some of the music. Little did he know that I was already playing music at home. Um, just a little back to the days of collecting the 45s. Um, um, I wanted to try that. So what I did was I had one of those stereos that used to open up like a suitcase. You know, it was like you used to take those what do you, portable, like those portable stereo, and they you would play the 45s, and you meet with friends. And so I was always, you know, would bring that stereo with a stack of records, but I wanted to make it one theme and stuff. So my mother used to have one of those in the living room, one of those I don't know what you like, that big furniture, you know, and you open it
Oh,
up, and it was the record players, and you know the stereo and the two speakers. And I got into trouble because I came in and I spliced the wires, and I put the wires together with my little portable 45. So that's how I used to play, and then I would listen to like, and whenever you got that, you would hold the 45 and hold the next record, and when the other record was fading, you know, you will let the other one go. And that was the beginning of the whole thing. And boy, did I get in trouble for that. I got a big, I mean, trouble with my mom, and then my uncle who came home on the weekends. He says, "What did you do here?" And so that's like pretty much. So going back to the wedding, when the guy came back, um, I was doing so well and everybody was dancing, and it was so that he just kind of like let me do it the whole thing. He just like, listen, you mind, just keep going because you got everybody going. And I guess his friend came in a little later on, showed up about like maybe 3 hours later into the party, and then his friend came in and they started talking, and so that was my first introduction to DJing.
Wow. Do you remember what year that was, that wedding?
Oh, I must say it had to be around, I think it was 1970. I want to say 76, 75, 76. So, that was a long time ago, yeah. So, and here I am
Yeah.
still DJing until this day, you know.
Wow. So you were at the wedding and you basically invented at home a way to mix without a mixer. Uh,
Yes.
and
Yeah.
then what happened then? Did you sort of start wanting to DJ in clubs?
Well, DJing in clubs was, they had all these underground clubs. And we, at that time, we were not prepared to DJ in clubs only because we didn't really have the proper equipment then. A lot of us, what we did was we rig the equipment because we didn't have a mixer that we could cue and listen to the next song. So what we did, Radio Shack actually came up with a headphone mixer, and what we did is we rigged that, and and we were able to. Now we were listening to the next song, so that was like, oh my God, we could do this. And then eventually Radio Shack came up with a microphone mixer for bands, and a lot of us, that's how we started mixing. It was not a stereo mixer, it was just to mix microphones. And that was I mean, we were really truly pioneer. So from that, then Radio Shack came in and did a little stereo mixer, and that was like the beginning of the beginning. That was like moving from from a propeller plane to a jet plane. And then so then from there, we started doing, a lot of us started doing weddings. We would carry the equipment and do, that's how most of us started, as mobile DJs doing weddings. And then the clubs started opening up, and it was very much underground clubs. Um, on Friday nights, for example, no one would go to school because we would go into house parties, what it was called, house parties. And that was like every Friday, and you weren't cool if you went to school on a Friday, you know what I mean? Because it was like, everybody would just go into these parties and party there till like 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and then everybody would go home. So that was one of my big start. I started playing in one of those parties with a guy, there was a guy named Frankie in Brooklyn, and he had a house, and he had a basement, and he hooked up the basement, and that was the beginning of my DJing career, playing for house parties on a Friday in a basement. And then later on, I moved from Brooklyn to the Bronx, and in the Bronx, Jelly Bean Benitez used to play at this club called Charlie, which was an underground club, very popular, and everybody used to go on a Friday night. Then Jelly Bean moved on to the clubs in the city, and I took on that slot on Fridays at that, and so yeah, it was, and then we kept growing and growing slowly, and here we are. Yeah.
So in Brooklyn, what was the neighborhood that you were in where you were playing these Friday parties?
Well, it's called Bushwick, Bushwick section, which is now also they have something called Highland Park. So we were living Bushwick, and then my friend had a house off Highland Park, because it was a very well-to-do. Highland Park was like the middle class neighborhood. So we were like, we live in, I it was a little, I guess you call it the ghetto, I guess, but it wasn't the project. We were living Coverage Street, and it was really nice. And then my friend Frankie lived a little, his family was, more, I guess they were professional and better off. And so he had the basement, and he turned the basement. And I think, I want to say that it started free, and then it got so popular that he started charging. I think he was charging like a quarter or 50 cents for people to get in. He was a very early day impressionarios, if you want to
Uh,
say.
Good for Frankie.
Yeah, I wonder where he is now.
That's funny. Okay, so then you move to the Bronx, you take over at the club that Jelly Bean was DJing, and what happened after that?
Well, after that, just things kept going. And eventually, I wind up having a job. Let me think here for a while. I went to the record pool once, and I think Dennis, who was it was no, because when this all was happening, I was still mobile. I was still doing a mobile DJ also, and I was playing in college and universities. And um, I I started a company because you had to incorporate, and I to be able to join the record pool. There was a record pool called for the no, it was 99 Prince Street, and that's where all the top DJs, they belong to that pool, because otherwise we had to still go around to the record labels and collect records. So to join the record pool, 99 Prince Street, you just couldn't join. You either had to be playing at a club, or if you were a mobile DJ, you had to incorporate, and you had to bring a corporate seal and all that. So I started a company called Calypso Mobile Disco in the Bronx. And then I was doing all the college and universities. I was doing their dance parties and things. And I later on, then I put together something called lessons on people how to dance the hustle. So I would hire these dancers, and these dancers would come along, and I would pay them, and we would go to this university and teach. They would teach the people how to do the hustle, and it turned out to be really quite well, and it turned out to be really good. Except that it 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 was very tiring, because at the end of the gig, while everybody was going home, the mobile DJ, you had to break down all the equipment. And not only did you just have to break down at the party, but then you had to drive home. And when you got home, you had to take all the equipment and take it out of the van, because otherwise, if people broke into the van, you were gone, you were out of business. So it really was a lot of work, a lot of work. So always the idea was to somehow get into a club. And one of the first club that I got into was, there was a club called Tambourines, which was on 43rd Street. It was on the Diplomat Hotel. They had a basement, and Tambourines was a woman gay bar. And so I went in, I auditioned. There was a girl that was in my she was Esther is her name, and she went to Evander Childs High School, and we were friends. And she knew that I DJ, and she knew that I always get the crowd going and things like that. And she came in, and she, I guess, were friends with the owner of this club, and she asked me, hey, there's a club downtown, and they're looking for a DJ. And she gave me her number, and I went in and I auditioned, and I got the gig. and it was fantastic. That was one of the best clubs that I ever worked at. And the music was amazing. The people. Then from there, I went into a club in the Hamptons called Mellow Mouth, which was they were auditioning for a DJ. They were looking for a DJ, and then I had moved on to a different record pool because 99 Prince Street had closed, and then I went audition for that club, and I got the job there. And but at the time, you in the industry, you weren't really respected as a DJ unless you were working for a gay club, because at the fashion, the music in the 70s, it was all a lot of the gay community, they had a big hold on that industry. The entertainment industry, the music industry, the fashion. So you could be a great DJ, but if you were not working at a gay club, you were, the industry kind of didn't look at you or respect you the way that. So there was a club called the Hampton Attic in the Hamptons. And then I went in and presented myself to the owners. And I said, I'm a DJ, and he says, well, why don't you come in and, show us what you can do? So that he brought me in on a Friday night. And oh my God, that the crowd went crazy. And, so then that was my first, club where I was a resident DJ and in the Hamptons. And I worked there for almost 4 years, I believe. And it became one of the hottest clubs in the Hamptons. There was a line around the block. People waited for hours to get in. And that's when Studio 54, Steve Rubel came in one night, and he was hanging out, and he would come in all the time and listen to me play. And then he came in one night and said, hey, I'm Steve Rubel. I'm reopening Studio 54, and I'd like you to play for me. And so I went in, auditioned, got the gig at Studio 54, and the rest has been history. And then from there, I met Mark Kamens, who was, I was working Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Robbie Leslie was playing on Sundays. Tuesday was a night where they brought in private parties. So they brought in different DJs, like Jelly Bean Benitez or whoever the promoter brought in. And then Wednesday night was like new music night. And Mark Kamens was working new music night. And I met Mark, and Mark was always into producing. And at the time, he, I knew that he was into producing. Pinky, who we still are good friends and kept in touch, he was working at a club called Cartoon Alley, which was a fantastic club. I used to love to hear music. The Pinky was a fantastic DJ, and he still is. So I used to go there, visit him, and they used to have live bands in there. And Madonna was playing. And Pinky came in and he said, hey, I never saw a band and a performer with so much energy. I mean, Madonna was running all over the stage. She was up and down. And I was like, oh my God, she really totally blew me away. And I'm like, Pinky, who is that? Who? Wow, they're fabulous. Who? And and then Pinky said to me, this is crazy girl. Her name is Madonna. and I said, man, can you introduce me to? Yeah, come on, I'll introduce you to her. And then he said, hey, this is my friend. This is my friend ViViANO. He's a DJ at Studio 54. And she's like flipped out. Oh my God, oh. And then she gave me a tape. And of her, she gave me a cassette. She gave me her number. And then I turn around on I saw Mark Kamens, because Mark Kamens used to come in when I was playing. And I said, hey, Mark, here's this girl. You got to listen to this girl, man. She is fabulous. And then he said, oh, I know who she is. I heard of her. And then he came in and took the tape. And I guess he called her and they got together, and he produced her first song, which was, I think, Everybody was her first, produced by Mark Kamens. And the rest has been history. But it was all one little circle, and we all kind of knew each other. And Jelly Bean. Then I partnered with a friend of mine, Preston Powell. We opened a club called Bay Street. I'll tell you a little bit about that. How it happened was that um, Studio 54 closed because of taxes and whatever reasons. Steve Rubel had problems, and so it closed. And then, of course, Steve Rubel took all his best employees and said, you're kind of not allowed to work here anymore. So then I went back to the Hamptons. I didn't have a job, so I went back to the club where I used to work at, called the Hampton Attic. When I went back to the Hampton Attic, the club was doing well, and it still did well. But they never. When I went back and Michael announced that ViViANO is back from Studio 54, I've never seen the line. The line went around the block of people waiting to come in, and that's when I said, "Oh my God, I didn't know I had such a following." Excuse me. And so that prompted me, the other DJ that was playing there, kind of, I didn't want to take his job at the time, and you know what I mean. And then I was friends with Preston, because Preston used to work Xenon. He was a DJ at Xenon, and I was a DJ at Studio 54. And Xenon at Studio 54, they were rival. They weren't really rival. It's just that Howard Stein, when he opened Xenon, he wanted something where other guests can come. He wasn't as picky at the door. And he always said, when you come to Xenon, you can party with somebody from the Bronx, somebody from Brooklyn, and feel, he wanted to mix the crowd a little more, as opposed to being exclusive like Studio 54, which was really very exclusive to get in. You had to be either weird or dressed, they had a way of choosing people to get in. Well, Xenon wasn't like that. Xenon was more relaxed, and he wanted to open a place where anybody can come in. And Preston was the DJ at Xenon at the time. And then I became friends with Preston, and I called him and I said, Preston, we should try to open a club in the Hamptons. And I came up with this idea, and we went in and we found this warehouse. It used to be an airplane hangar. And it was a lot of challenges. It was a lot of challenges for us getting the liquor license and everything else. But I did convince him to open this club with me, and we did it. And the club was a success, very big. We started doing a lot of the bands, and everyone that was somebody, like people that we have helped and musicians that we have promoted. They will go and play for us, because they were, okay, Viv and Preston, oh yeah, come on, we'll do the gig. Because at the time, some of these records, the promoters would come to the DJ booth to bring the records so that you would play the records for them. And back then, the DJs at the club, we had a lot of power, because there weren't a lot of radio stations playing music, disco music. And when we played a record, some of the promoters would tell us that we were responsible for, selling 200,000 copies in New York City and everything. Because when we would play a record, the DJs of today, they will play one record, or they are used to playing the music that's played on the radio. You hardly go to a club anymore and hear music that's not on the radio. It's very, they're very commercial, and it's something that I always say, you have to educate your audience. A good DJ always educate his audience. You play songs that you haven't heard. And in New York, that was a trend, and especially in a gay club. The gay clubs, they didn't want to hear what was on the radio. They want to hear music that was not on the radio. They wanted to be inspired. So we broke a lot of records, and then we would report it. We reported to the radio stations. They took the list from all the top DJs and gathered, and that's how they chose a lot of the music. Then there was a Billboard magazine also, and Billboard magazine, if you were a reporter to Billboard magazine, there was Brian Chin at the time was working for Billboard, and he will take all the records, and these are the hits, and so if we had a hit, for example, like let's say Donna Summer, "Love to Love You, Baby," or "I Feel Love," we would play the song like two or three, five, six times in the one night. When the record was a hit, you heard that record almost every 15 minutes. We will play it again, and it will pack the floor. So that record, imagine every club doing that in New York City, that became the record of the weekend or the week. You know what I mean? So then the radio station will pick it up, Frankie Crocker or any, and that's how we broke a lot of records. So we were very well respected in the industry. The DJs of the early DJs, a lot of the radio stations, they rely on the early DJs to break records, because they had no other way of and it was a new music. It was something totally brand new. And then of course, Saturday Night Fever came out, the movie, and that's what really, really opened the door and for disco. And then disco were popping all over the place, and then that became the avenue for clubs to open everywhere. And then I guess more clubs, more DJs, and so that's how we met a lot of the artists, because a lot of the promoters will come in and they will bring the artists with them. For example, U2, they would frequent Studio 54, the Rolling Stone, and all these people. So we had a lot of the artists play at Bay Street. And then that's I knew Madonna, and then Madonna was dating Jelly Bean, and I used to drive Madonna to some of her appointments, to go, because she would have to take the bus, and it would be cold and raining. And one day I was going to go see Preston. They used to live at 112 West 72nd Street, and while I was waiting for Preston, Madonna was there waiting for the bus, and she was very cold. And so I was like, here, I'm going to the label. Let me give you a ride. So I, drive her to, and then we became friends like that. And then she's a superstar now. Look at her now, and who would have thought?
So I
So
want to get the years of all these things more or less. So the club that you opened in the Hamptons, what year do you think that was?
that was a year, that was I believe it was 1982.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was 1982 that we opened Bay Street. Because I was at Studio 54. I think I was at Studio 54 in 79 to 80, or I don't recall when they did, because when they did the reopening, but it was when they did the reopening. Because Studio 54 in the beginning, what a lot of people don't know is that it wasn't as popular in the very beginning. When they first opened up, the place will be maybe 100 people inside. But Steve was very smart. I learned so much from Steve. He would go to Mark, and Mark Beneke was the doorman, and he would say, "Don't let anybody else in." And it will be empty. I mean, compared to you will have 100 people partying inside, but everyone outside thought the place was mob, and because why can't we get in? And so he started with this whole thing, and it became very, and it just caught on, because people like exclusivity. And then when he closed and then he reopened, it was such a, there's a lot of pictures of it now. You see the ambulance outside. A lot of the news media was calling it the day of the locusts, because it was so, I mean, it was very, very crowded. That was the night that I debuted there. That was the night that I played there. I played there with Roy Tho, which was also a fantastic DJ at the time. And but then when we opened Bay Street became very popular because we were bringing a lot of the live entertainment, and a lot of the people that we met. Preston will meet some of them and promote the record at Xenon. I would promote the record at Studio 54. And those were the hottest club in New York City at the time. So some of the management booking agents, hey, Preston Viv, yeah, okay, we'll have, and that's why we were getting so many great bands to play at Bay Street. We, in one time, we had every, with the exception of Prince and Michael Jackson, we had almost every artist of the 80s play Bay Street. From Madonna, Tina Turner, Laura Branigan, James Brown, you name it. I mean, they all played. Meatloaf, the list goes on and on. So very popular, and it caught on really well.
So from your early days, mobile DJing, splicing in your mom's house, right, to being a DJ at Bay Street Studio 54, obviously that's very different equipment, different level of professionalization. How did your DJing change from those early days to when you were playing in those clubs?
Well, the early days were the foundation, that's and learning to play like that, because we when you segment from one record to the next and it's flawless, that keeps it builds. But there's other another aspect of DJing which a lot of the new DJs of today don't know, and that is how to build the audience, how to take the audience in a different mood, how to take them from one mood to the next, and how to keep them on, because so you did it through the music, by going from one certain record to the next. That was building a lot of the and created an atmosphere that it's very difficult for a lot of the new DJs to learn today. That's the reason why sometimes you go to these clubs and it's almost like you don't feel it anymore, and that's because the DJ is all over the place. He doesn't know how to take the crowd from point A to point B. And what we learned was that we need to tell a story. When we're playing music, like for example, myself, I take you on a trip. I start you off with a story and I'm telling you that story and I'm going on to the story all the way till the end of the evening. And back then, if the people at the end of the evening didn't clap for you, then you didn't do a good job. But it was very well known that at the end of the evening, people would just stop dancing and just clap for you. If they didn't like a record that you were playing, or didn't like the music that you were playing, they would do what is called a sit down. And a sit down was the worst thing that a DJ can ever experience. Thank God I never had one of those. But a sit down is when the people just come in, they do a little circle around each other and they just sit on the dance floor and start talking and ignore the DJ. And so very bad, because that means that you're not doing anything for me, you're not taking me anywhere. And so those early days were the days that got me to that transition of being where I am today. And when you did the parties on a Friday, you also knew when to play Let's Get It On, Marvin Gaye. And then you play a whole section of just love songs. And it was, so everyone got along. It wasn't like it is in some of the parties today where, people come in and it's all about fighting and shooting and things. And, those days, we didn't have that in those days. The only thing we had, obviously, we had gangs. There was different gangs in different places and different where. But a lot of this time, whenever we went to these places, everyone got along. Everyone just like, we went in there to party. We went in there to listen to the music. We went in there to pass the time, because it's very challenging when you're growing up in the ghetto. It's it's a little bit of a challenge. So you go there to forget about things, and it was a part of us growing up. It was a part of our life, um, and many of the top DJs, they made it by playing in the park. They would bring their equipment, and then they would do a set at the basketball court, and that's how we entertain. And so it's just very different than what it is today. Today you have massive parties. And I'm not saying that the music is not, it's not, it's there's a lot of great music out there. I mean, fabulous music. You just have to know how to find it. I spend a lot of hours and hours just researching music and listening to music and putting music together, because that's the key. If you're doing, there's many DJs that they just do it for just to be popular. They don't really have a clue, and all you see them is playing with buttons and things. And you gotta create. You have to create. You have to be a creator. If I can't take you from point A to point B, all the way to the end of story, and for you to feel like, oh my God, I had a great time, then I didn't do my job. So,
One thing that stands out to me also, some of the clubs you were DJing, for example, in the beginning, you said you DJed that gay women's club and you're not a gay woman. So obviously there was an openness there.
right. Well, at the time, remember, there weren't too many female DJs at that time. Maybe um, there was a few, but not as many. You know, I, I don't quote me on this, but there was probably about five, top female DJs in the whole thing. So it was, most DJs were male. However, I guess what you're trying to get at is that you had to have an open mind, and music has no, there's no, you have to close your eyes and not know the audience. Not, music has no boundaries. You can't say, it certainly has to sound differently, because, for example, if you're playing at a gay club, it has to be energy, it has to be meaningful. The music has to be about love and caring, and you still have, it still has to reflect that, as opposed to if you're playing at a urban club. There's different type of music. Some of the urban music, unfortunate, deals with a lot of violence, and a lot of them, it's guns and fights, and you even have the gun sounds in some of the records. And I'm a true believer that music brings violence. I experienced it myself, when, and that is one of the reasons why I stopped DJing for a while. When music got into gangster rap, I really stopped. I said, I can't promote this. I can't play this. I can't get into this. So I went in and I did something else. And then music started changing again. And then that's when I came back. Then I opened a club in Binghamton. and we had an urban night, and unfortunate, I had to close it down because there was a lot of violent, a lot of fights, and and it didn't work. It didn't work. So you know, music takes you from one thing to another one. I can make people literally cry at a bar if I want to. I can make them drink all night by playing different type of music. I can make people fall in love all night by playing music. It's amazing the power of music. But music is very, very powerful. The emotions that you get when you listen to a song, that's the reason why sometimes you listen to a song and you can remember exactly the day and time where you were when you first heard that song, because it's really an amazing thing. So but I don't want to go into the music thing so much. I don't want to bore
Yeah.
your audience.
Oh no, not at all. Well, actually, I want to ask you a question. I want to go back. You were talking about the record pools. I think that's very interesting. The record pools are interesting part of early DJing history. So you say you started at 99 Prince Street and then you moved to another one. What was the other one that you moved to?
The other one was one of the first record pool that opened up was 99 Prince Street, which was opened by David Mancuso. David Mancuso was a DJ as well, and he had a place called the Loft, which was in the same place as the record pool. That was the first record pool where, because it was a brand new thing. I mean, labels didn't even know how to promote this, or it was a brand new thing. So David opened it, and that's where you would get all your records, and you had to do feedback on the records. You had to listen to the records. You had to let the label know exactly what what you thought of the record, the audience response on the record. So that told the label, pretty much, it gave them feedback on whether they had a hit or not. So we would get a lot of the records in ahead of time, even before they were released to the market. We would get records that they call them test pressing. Some of the records we got them without label. We didn't even know who the artist was, and then later on they will release and say, oh, this is, this was the artist. And then, or sometimes they will put a letter, a letterhead saying to you, when the record was going to be released, who the artist it was, who was involved in the record. So it became a very important part of DJing. And then it became also very exclusive to get into those record pools. Not just anybody could get in. David Mancuso was very, very selective, and into what DJs and the professionalism of the DJs. Then David had an assistant, and Judy Weinstein. And Judy Weinstein used to work with David. And then Judy Weinstein decided to open her own record pool. And that record pool was For the Record. Then Mancuso closed. He stayed open a couple of months more. And then many of us went with Judy. And then we went to For the Record. Then after For the Record, bear in mind, there was a lot of selection. There was a lot of misrepresentation in music. Meaning, how do I say this? You had the gay clubs who were dominating the music scene. They were truly dominating. But then, right, you had the regular urban club and the regular, the people that were straight, that they weren't gay, the people from the Bronx, Brooklyn, and they were not represented, in a sense that there was who is promoting that music. And that's when IDRC came in, and then IDRC opened up with Eddie Rivera. And Eddie Rivera was very, very smart, because then he opened a record pool that was really geared towards the Latinos DJ at the time, and the music of the we don't want to say ghetto, but the music of the street, you know, which was like the, you know, representation of all this great music. And then he home on that. So you had had IDRC, International Disco Record Pool, and then you have For the Record, Judy Weinstein. And then of course, you know, eventually Judy Weinstein decided, she started representing some very, very top DJs like uh, I can't think of some of the name now, but oh God, I can't think of the production company that she had. Let me think here for a second. Oh, anyway, David Morales. You know, she had David Morales. I'll think of it and it'll come back to me. But she started focusing more on that production aspect of it, the remixes of it. And Frankie Knuckles, she had Frankie Knuckles. She had all
Oh,
these top DJs.
Def Mix. I
Death
just
Mix,
Googled it.
that's
Def
it, that's
Mix.
it.
Yeah.
Death Mix Production, you know, Death Mix Productions. And you know, and then Eddie was like, you know, homing in on promoting all this music of the street, you know, the neighborhood, the music that, you know. And so it was really good because it was well balanced, you know. And then of course I got to a point where, you know, you belong to all three of them. And then, like, for example, I belong to For the Record, and then I also belong to IDRC, you know, because you wanted to cover, you know, like
Oh,
now, for example, I'm in several record pools, you know, that I pay monthly fees to. I belong to one that's from England, Zip DJ. I belong to another one called X Mix. I belong to another one, you know, so there's different record pool. So, so especially when I'm working on a cruise ship, it's a little difficult because you have audience from all different part of the world, and you have to represent them, and you have to, you know, you have your European audience, you have your international audience, you have people from Mexico, different time and different season, different time of the years. You have different people coming in. Like, for example, now you have the spring break, you know, so a lot of the college, they, you know, they go to Miami, they go, you know, but then you have some of the college students that go on a cruise, you know, because, you know, they enjoy cruising. So they get a group of them that will go to a cruise. And I don't, um, I like to be, where people come into the cruise, I like them to say, oh my God, our DJ blew me away, because, you know, he played everything, you know, and the place was packed. So, you know, I take a lot of pride in that.
I got to take one of your cruises one of these
Yeah, you
days.
have
That would
to.
be fun.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
have to. You have to. I just got off Celebrity. I was doing we were doing Miami, 7 days Miami, and the Caribbean. And then I went to another one that went to Brazil, Argentina, and Mexico. And then there was now I'm going on for the summer. I'm going to be going to Holland, America, to do the summer from Barcelona to the Mediterranean. So yeah, so it's great. It keeps me busy.
So nice. Well,
Yeah.
you know, one of the reasons I wanted to interview you, of course, was because I'm trying to interview the original pioneer DJs that are Latino, because I find
Mhm.
that there is less attention paid to them. And you just mentioned a few people. Eddie Rivera, for example, IDRC was, of course, Latino, yourself, Jelly Bean, Pinky. So are there other
Your dad.
people, my dad, Ronnie Soares, are there other people that you think I should be aware of?
Yeah, there's many DJs now. Some of them were great. Some of them didn't get the recognition or the status that they deserve. Most of them are on my Facebook page, and I still keep in touch with them. I don't want to, there's so many to mention that I don't want to, mention all of them, because if I leave somebody out, then they're like, oh my God, babe, you didn't mention me. So, but you're welcome to go to my Facebook page, which is ViViANO, on Facebook, and you'll be able to find a lot of the DJs from Miami. There was a lot of DJs in Miami that broke, they were pioneer DJs in Miami that never got the recognition, because being in Miami, and for some reason, New York City and then Chicago dominated the club scene. But it was really New York City that dominated the club scene for whatever reason. I'm not trying to say that, but it was just, when you wanted to go clubbing, it was New York City. And then Chicago came in, and they were known for house music. Frankie Knuckles, and so many of them, and then Miami was also known, I guess, freestyle. They were very big in freestyle, Miami, but there was a lot of great clubs in Miami. There was a club called Backstreet, which was fantastic back in the days. The Copacabana, the Copa was very, very popular club in Fort Lauderdale. So, but there's so many of us. It was tough. It was tough being Latino and getting into some of the clubs. I remember one time, because it's a learning experience, but I remember, my name is ViViANO, and I remember one time they have booked me at this club in Queens, in New York. And when I got to the club, the owner, and the manager, they were expecting an Italian guy to walk in the door. And when they saw me, they were like, are you ViViANO? They were very shocked, because, I was not Italian. I was not white, and then so they almost didn't want to let me play. And then a friend of mine that was, always one with me everywhere, he came in and he said, listen, he can play music. You heard his tapes, are you going to let him play or not? Because, and then they had no choice, because they advertised this DJ ViViANO coming from New York City, and, going all the way to this place. It was Throxneck, I think, or Queens, between Queens and Throxneck. And, and the place was full of people. So they had no choice to let me play. And then the minute I started playing, I took over, and it was like everybody forgot that there was this dark-skinned Hispanic in the booth, and it was all of a sudden the owner was like, oh my God, fantastic. And, we apologize for the whole thing. So it was a little tough, it's always being a little like that in entertainment. In the early days of entertainment, from being a fashion model to a movie star to, to being Black, it was difficult to get certain roles, because of where we came from, and our background. So, yeah, so it was a little bit of a challenge being Latino, but I guess we held our ground because we were good. We were really, really good. I mean, and we proved ourselves, by, being the good, we, and a lot of us are still there. We are great DJs. We were great DJs, and we're great DJs now. And we really knew how to take the audience from one aspect of the night to another. And so, yeah, but there was a lot of challenges.
And like you said, you're still DJing. Many of you are still DJing
Oh,
successfully.
yes,
So
many of us are still DJing. Many of us are still DJing. And of course, now it's a little different, because now, if you go into different aspect of music, for example, if you go into EDM, electronic dance music, most of the electronic dance music DJs are non-Hispanic. They're white. A lot of them from, Europeans, a lot of them from England, and it's a whole different scene. But it depends, where you go and the aspect of different music. Um, there's certain music that, I don't, I, I don't like playing certain music that's above 140, 145, all night long, 145 beats per minute. There's people that, they take substance for that to, I like playing house music. I like playing EDM, which is also another form of house music. I like playing that 40. Um, so what we call ourselves now is open format DJs. So, we play a little bit of everything.
Upper format DJs.
Open
Yeah.
format.
Open format DJs. Oh,
Yeah.
I see. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense.
yeah.
Well, before we close, I want to give you also an opportunity to talk about the other things you've done. One thing that is amazing to me is so many of you guys that were pioneer DJs, you were DJs, you opened clubs, you were promoters, you were producers, you are promoters, you are producers. So what are some of the other things that you've done in the music industry that have been important to you?
Well, one of the things that I've done, because um there was DJs that always loved producing. Jelly Bean being one of them, Mark Kamens. They love production. They love being in the studio and producing. I also like producing and being in the studio, but my whole forte, which I love, was promoting different acts and different bands. So I went into the aspect of promotion. I went to the aspect of opening a club. And I opened very successful club. Bay Street was one of them. Then I opened another restaurant, jazz club in the Hamptons called Bourbon Street, which was very, very popular at the time. There I was bringing a lot of Motown artists. I was bringing a lot of jazz artists and things like that, because I like promoting. I still love it. I'm working on doing something soon, well, next year, and so I did. I did many concerts, big concerts, like I mentioned before. One of the highlights of the concerts that I did was doing James Brown, working with James Brown. Tina Turner was one of them. UB40 was another band that I promoted. Also Simply Red, and also a lot of reggae. I think I promoted the Wailers, um, Yellow Man. So many artists. And then a lot of the artists from the 80s as well, like Joan Jett and the Black Heart. Almost, if you mention some of them, there was so many of them. And I still love that. So I was able to go into that aspect of the business. And there was, I also started producing towards the end, but production, it's a very tough business, because a lot of times it's not how good your product is, it's how much money you have behind it to promote it. Then it gets involving other things, where people will play your record if you pay a certain amount of money and things like that. And it's different aspect of the music, which is makes it a little sad, because there's a lot of songs that are on the radio or are popular because of the money that was behind the song, not necessarily how good the song is, but how much money they were able to put behind the song, and that made it. There's people that get paid to say, "Oh my God, here comes my favorite song of the day," and a lot of the audience don't realize that they've been paid to say that, and so it's a heavy subject that I don't really think we want to get into, because so we don't want to be banned from being on the air.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think what it represents, the music industry has changed. has
Yes.
grown, you know, so it represents a real change in the way that records are popularized. As you said,
Hmm.
in the early days, the DJs were breaking the records,
Yes.
um, which is different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, along with the dancers, so it was a hands-on, because a DJ is as good as its audience. If a DJ doesn't have an audience and a great audience to play to, he's, no matter how good he is, he doesn't have that audience. So so you have to have an audience. That's why many DJs, like the top DJs that you see today, David Guetta and some of this, they're great, but their audience is there. They are playing for that specific audience, thousands and thousands and thousands of people that worship these guys. So, I'm not, they're also great DJs, but you know what I mean? They have a target audience, and that's important. So when we were breaking the records, we knew what was a good record, but also the audience, because like, remember, what I told you about the sit down, if a DJ was not rocking the crowd and the crowd just sat down, you knew not to play that record again, because you know that record just didn't. So they didn't. It's not like today. Today they push and push and push and push and play a record like every 15 minutes till eventually you learn to not like it, but learn to accept it. Back then a lot of records just didn't make it to the air. They just, so there was a lot more challenge for the musician and the artist to be creative, and also we didn't have a lot of the technology that we have today. Today we can have a singer who's not such a great singer, but through vocoders and different studio equipment, we can make them sound great, but they can't hit a note, and so some of them don't even perform live, and some of them perform live with backup singers who are like and things like that. So it's a whole different scenario these days. I think back then the audience had more control of things. So
Well, DJ ViViANO, thank you so much for telling me these stories. I appreciate getting to learn about your influence on the music industry. Thank you.
thank you, and thank you to your audience for listening. If I bore some of you, I'm so sorry. I was all over the place, but that's because there's so much to tell in so little time, and so thank you.
Thank you. Let me stop the recording here.